Today's video features the most horrifying deaths during African safaris. From a photographer who positioned dangerously close to a protective elephant herd, to a guide who led his clients on an unauthorized safari in prime lion territory. It was March 15, 2019, in the sprawling grasslands of Kenya's Masai Mara National Reserve, where golden savanna stretched endlessly under the African sun. The reserve, home to over 95 species of mammals and 570 bird species, attracts thousands of visitors annually during the Great Migration season. Among the acacia trees and rolling hills, predators and prey engage in the eternal dance of survival that has captivated humans for generations. 24-year-old Delaney Brooks had traveled from Los Angeles with a singular mission: to create viral content for her 3,300 Instagram followers. The lifestyle influencer, known for her daredevil travel posts and boundary-pushing photography, had hired local guide Samuel Kiprotic against park regulations. Samuel, a 45-year-old father of three, desperately needed the extra income following his recent divorce. Despite his 15 years of guiding experience, financial pressure had clouded his judgment. Delaney had dismissed standard safety briefings as overcautious, believing her previous exotic location shoots had prepared her for any situation. The influencer had specifically requested close encounters with big cats, promising Samuel substantial payment for exclusive access to restricted areas. While resident prey was still present across the Green Plains, male lions remained aggressively protective when humans closed in on resting prides, especially when cubs were present. Charges in these situations were driven by territorial defense rather than hunger. Adult male Maasai lions typically weigh between 380 and 430 pounds, with dominant territory holders occasionally exceeding 450 pounds during peak prey seasons. Their bite force is reported between 650 and 1,000 psi, depending on measurement method and leverage at the canine pressure point. While lions are most active at night, territorial males have been documented charging in daylight when disturbed, especially when cubs or resting prides are approached too closely. The attack unfolded during the afternoon golden hour, when Delaney had convinced Samuel to drive off designated tourist routes, positioning their open-top Land Rover about 160 feet away from a pride of 5 lionesses, resting with their cubs under an acacia tree. Against Samuel's urgent protests, she exited the vehicle with her camera equipment, walking roughly 100 feet toward the pride to capture close-up shots. The lionesses watched with mild interest, but remained relaxed in the afternoon heat. Neither Delaney nor Samuel noticed the massive male lion concealed in tall trees about 130 feet to their left. The 400-pound predator had been resting when the vehicle's arrival disturbed his territory. As Delaney focused on positioning her camera for timed shots, the male lion rose silently and began his approach. His powerful frame moved through the golden grass with practiced stealth, closing the distance while Delaney adjusted her phone screen for the perfect angle. Samuel shouted warnings and began honking the horn frantically, but Delaney waved him off as she turned her back to position herself for a selfie. The lion reached striking distance and launched forward, closing the last 50 feet in 3 quick bounds, far too fast for her to react. His massive front paws struck Delaney between the shoulder blades with tremendous force, sending her crashing face first into the red earth. The lion's jaws immediately clamped down on the back of her neck, his 4-inch canine teeth penetrating deep into her cervical vertebrae. The crushing bite severed her spinal cord, paralyzing her from the neck down, while his powerful jaw muscles applied hydraulic pressure that fractured multiple vertebrae. Samuel drove the vehicle closer while throwing his water bottle and shouting, but the predator maintained his grip. Using his muscular hindquarters, the lion began dragging his prey toward the nearby thicket. Samuel grabbed his emergency flare and fired it toward the lion, the bright red projectile landing just about 10 feet away. The predator paused momentarily but showed no intention of releasing his catch. The lion's jaws worked methodically, repositioning for a more secure hold, while crushing bone and tearing through muscle tissue. Over the next several minutes, the lion dragged Delaney's motionless form into dense brush, roughly 300 feet from the vehicle. Samuel continued his attempts at intervention, driving as close as vegetation allowed while using his radio to call for emergency assistance. The predator's instincts drove him to secure his prey in cover before feeding, a behavior that made rescue impossible. The entire attack lasted approximately 7 minutes from initial contact to when the lion disappeared into thick cover. Delaney Brooks died from massive trauma to her cervical spine and subsequent blood loss. Her phone, dropped during the initial impact, contained her final photos of the moments before the attack. Park authorities launched an immediate investigation into the incident, focusing on possible violations of established field safety protocols, including the restriction against solo travel after dusk and unauthorized off-trail movement. The Kenya Wildlife Service implemented stricter enforcement measures for tourist and research activities, emphasizing communication and movement policies that had been overlooked. Delaney's family released statements calling for improved safety regulations, while her social media accounts were flooded with tributes from followers worldwide, though many also criticized the disregard for the very precautions designed to prevent such tragedies. It was July 8, 2015, and the golden morning light filtered through the acacia trees of Hululua Imfolozi Park in South Africa as 21-year-old Isabella Cruz adjusted her phone tripod for the perfect shot to post on her Instagram. The ancient park, established in 1895, stretched across 96,000 hectares of rolling hills, river valleys, and sparse woodland patches in KwaZulu-Natal, representing one of Africa's oldest proclaimed nature reserves. Birds darted through shafts of sunlight, while distant termite mounds and small waterholes dotted the landscape, evidence of the intricate ecosystem thriving here. Isabella had been granted special permission for supervised vehicle-based visits as part of a sponsored collaboration with a fashion brand promoting ecotourism, but her pursuit of the perfect shot often clashed with the strict safety protocols that governed visitor access to this pristine wilderness. The guides had briefed her on the risks, emphasizing that guests must remain in vehicles at all times and that even herbivores could turn deadly if provoked. But Isabella's focus on content creation made it easy to overlook these critical warnings. Isabella had grown up in suburban Johannesburg, where her closest encounter with wildlife involved posing with giraffe feed at a safari park. Her passion for social media had developed during high school, but it wasn't until she began her influencer career that she discovered the attention garnered by striking, unconventional photos of exotic locations could become her signature. Brand managers praised her eye for aesthetics, but they worried about her tendency to push boundaries for content that would stand out from thousands of other influencer feeds. Friends often noted her meticulous attention to detail, every strand of hair, every wrinkle in a blouse. But those habits, while perfect for social media, sometimes distracted her from situational awareness in unpredictable outdoor settings. The morning's target was a white rhinoceros cow with her 6-month-old calf, a pair that had been frequenting the area near the Mpila camp for several weeks. Isabella had previously photographed them from inside the safari vehicle, capturing the encounters in polished, professional-looking shots. But those images, she felt, lacked the intimacy and drama that would ensure maximum engagement on her rapidly growing social media channels. She had even brought a secondary smartphone for slow-motion footage. And when the guide briefly stepped away to coordinate with another vehicle via radio, Isabella saw her opportunity. What Isabella didn't fully understand was that her pursuit of viral content placed her among some of the world's most dangerous animals during their most vulnerable moments. The park was home to both black and white rhinoceros species, with the white rhino population representing one of conservation's greatest success stories after being brought back from near extinction. However, this success had created new challenges as increasing populations led to more frequent human-wildlife encounters. Rangers often warned that the protective behavior of mothers with calves could be triggered in seconds, and the dense vegetation provided natural cover that could conceal an approaching threat. White rhinoceros are the world's second-largest land mammals, with adult females weighing up to 4,000 pounds and standing 6 feet tall at the shoulder. Despite their name, they are gray, with the term white derived from the Afrikaans word wide, meaning wide, referring to their square-shaped mouths adapted for grazing. These massive herbivores can reach speeds of 35 miles per hour when charging, using their prominent horns as formidable weapons when defending territory or protecting young. They have tough, thick skin, which provides protection from minor scrapes and predator attacks, but their sheer size allows them to inflict catastrophic damage to anything in their path. Mother rhinos are particularly aggressive during the first year after giving birth, viewing any approaching figure as a potential danger to their calves. Observers note that these charges are lightning fast and nearly impossible to escape if the rhino has already locked eyes on a target. The incident began when Isabella made the critical decision that would cost her life, quietly exiting the safari vehicle, while the guide was distracted and stepping onto the ground to approach the grazing rhino pair on foot. She had spotted them in a clearing about 50 meters from where the vehicle was parked, the morning light perfectly framing the scene for an Instagram story. Isabella advanced cautiously, her designer sandals crunching on the dry grass, believing her quiet movements would allow her to reach an optimal shooting angle without disturbing the animals. The rhino cow had already detected Isabella's presence when she first dismounted from the vehicle, the movement and unfamiliar silhouette catching the animal's attention. The cow continued grazing while monitoring the approaching human, her body language tense but not yet aggressive. Isabella managed to close the distance to approximately 40 meters before kneeling behind a small termite mound to steady her tripod, unaware that the rhino was already alert and assessing the threat level. Isabella began taking rapid bursts of video and photos, her movements becoming more animated as she adjusted angles and repositioned herself for better lighting. The combination of her continued forward movement, her upright human silhouette against the morning sky, and the shifting breeze that carried her scent directly to the rhino triggered the cow's defensive response. The rhino's head snapped up, ears pivoting forward, eyes locking onto Isabella's position with focused intensity. The cow's tail flicked in agitation, and she took several deliberate steps toward Isabella, displaying the full length of her horn. Isabella realized the danger too late. She stood and turned to run back toward the vehicle, but the sudden movement confirmed to the rhino that this was a threat requiring immediate action. The 4,000-pound rhino charged, her powerful legs propelling her massive body forward as she closed the distance in a few explosive seconds. Isabella managed only a few stumbling steps before the rhino was upon her. The rhino's massive shoulder struck Isabella from the side, the impact sending her flying through the air before she crashed to the ground. Before Isabella could attempt to rise, the rhino was over her, using her enormous weight to trample the perceived threat. The rhino's front feet came down on Isabella's torso with crushing force, the impact fracturing multiple ribs and causing massive internal trauma. A second strike caught Isabella's head. The force of 4,000 pounds concentrated through the rhino's foot, causing catastrophic skull fractures and cervical spine damage. The attack lasted less than 10 seconds, but the injuries were immediately fatal. The rhino stood over Isabella's motionless body for several moments, ensuring the threat was neutralized before returning to her calf. Her carefully curated outfit and accessories were scattered across the scene, her phone lying several meters away, where it had fallen during the initial impact. The guide, who had heard Isabella's brief scream and the sound of the charge, immediately radioed for emergency assistance and drove toward the scene. Rangers responding to the call arrived within 12 minutes, but Isabella was already dead, her injuries far beyond any possibility of medical intervention. Her phone was recovered several meters from the impact site, its casing cracked, with fragmented clips revealing her approach and the Rhino's charge in stark, undeniable detail. Investigators confirmed she had violated fundamental park safety protocols by exiting the vehicle without authorization and approaching a white rhino cow with a calf on foot. The rhino's reaction was determined to be normal, defensive, maternal behavior, and the animal and her calf were left unharmed. Some online viewers debated whether her focus on content creation contributed to the tragedy, while others criticized the momentary lapse in supervision that allowed her to leave the vehicle. The rhino cow and her calf were unharmed, acting within natural instincts to protect her young. Isabella's death prompted immediate revisions to visitor rules. Photography permits now require continuous guide supervision, with guests prohibited from exiting vehicles under any circumstances near vulnerable wildlife. And influencers collaborating with brands must receive mandatory safety briefings with signed acknowledgement of protocols. Her family established a scholarship supporting young women pursuing wildlife and environmental education, ensuring her legacy endured in a constructive form. It was November 2nd, 2017, and the headlights of the tour bus cut through the absolute darkness of Tsavo East National Park. The engine had fallen silent 20 minutes earlier, and what had begun as a minor inconvenience was rapidly transforming into something far more sinister. Ramesh Patel, a 58-year-old retired hardware wholesaler from Leicester, had been traveling through East Africa for 2 weeks, his first trip abroad since his wife Anjali's death from cancer 8 months earlier. His adult children had encouraged the journey, hoping it might help him process his grief. The safari tour had been a last-minute addition to his itinerary, booked through a budget operator that offered rates significantly lower than established companies. During the mandatory safety briefing that morning, the guide had emphasized repeatedly that passengers must never leave the vehicle under any circumstances. The tour bus, a converted truck with open sides and bench seating for 12 passengers, had been making the return journey to the main lodge when the engine began sputtering around 7:15 p.m. Kimani, the driver, kept his torch trained on the engine and positioned himself so the bus remained between him and the grass line. His attempts to restart the engine produced only clicking sounds. Several passengers noticed movement in the darkness beyond. Within minutes, at least 5 lions had materialized from the bush, their forms becoming visible as they crossed through the beam of the headlights. The Australian couple began filming on their phones. Kimani climbed back into the driver's seat and radioed the main office for assistance, reporting their GPS coordinates. The office confirmed a rescue vehicle would be dispatched, estimating roughly 30 minutes for arrival. African lions are the only truly social big cats, living in prides of up to 30 individuals that cooperate in hunting and territory defense. Adult male lions in the wild typically weigh between about 330 and 420 pounds. Even so, a fully grown male can easily overpower a lone human. Their night vision, aided by a reflective layer behind the retina, makes them far more effective in low light than a human. Most critically, male lions are territorial and will attack perceived threats to assert dominance, particularly after dark when their confidence peaks. The lions continued their slow approach, occasionally pausing to watch the bus. Their movements were unhurried but deliberate, closing the distance by increments. Kimani instructed all passengers to remain seated and silent, explaining that lions typically would not attack a vehicle unless provoked. Another passenger later reported that Ramesh seemed almost manic, insisting repeatedly that the animals could sense fear and that showing confidence was the solution. Moments later, Ramesh stood and moved toward the open side of the bus. Kimani grabbed his arm, pleading with him to sit down. Ramesh pulled free, stating that he would demonstrate how to properly handle wildlife. Multiple passengers were filming as Ramesh positioned himself on the step at the side exit, 1 foot on the ground. He raised his arms above his head and shouted toward the closest lion, a male approximately 40 feet away. The lion closed the gap in seconds. The attack was captured on 4 separate phones from different angles. The videos were grainy and overexposed where the headlights hit. They showed the sequence well enough to corroborate witness statements. The male exploded forward with shocking acceleration, his massive body low to the ground as he closed the gap. Ramesh had no time to react. The impact knocked him completely off the bus step, his body slamming into the hard-packed earth with audible force. The lion's jaws clamped around Ramesh's throat before he could even attempt to rise, the predator's frame pinning him flat. The male began shaking his head violently side to side. Ramesh's arms, which had initially flailed against the lion's shoulders, went slack within 15 seconds. Blood spread rapidly across the pale dirt, appearing black in the artificial light. The lion maintained his grip for nearly a minute, applying crushing pressure that collapsed Ramesh's trachea and fractured cervical vertebrae. When the body had gone completely limp, the male released his hold momentarily before clamping down again on Ramesh's shoulder. He began dragging the body backward, away from the bus and out of the headlight beams. 2 female lions materialized from the darkness to join the male, their interest in the kill immediate. Within seconds, all 3 had dragged Ramesh approximately 60 feet from the bus, where they began feeding. Kimani had radioed park control the moment Ramesh stepped down. The rescue vehicle, already en route, diverted directly to their coordinates. Rangers arrived 25 minutes after the initial attack, equipped with spotlights, loudspeakers, and air horns. They fired rifle shots into the air to drive the lions away from what remained of Ramesh's body. The medical examiner's report, filed 2 days later, listed cause of death as primary cause: catastrophic cervical trauma with rapid hemorrhage. The report noted that Ramesh had suffered a crushed windpipe, fractured neck at the C3 and C4 vertebrae, and massive tissue damage to the throat and upper chest. Ramesh's body was repatriated to Leicester. Kenyan wildlife authorities seized the phone footage from all passengers as evidence and levied substantial fines against the company for negligence. The operator's license was suspended pending safety improvements. It was September 14, 2014, and the acacia trees of Hwang National Park cast skeletal shadows across the Zimbabwean bush as darkness fell. By nightfall, a group would be loud, reckless, and looking for thrills their daytime game drives hadn't provided. At 33, Tomasz Kurek had built a reputation back home for taking dangerous dares, climbing construction scaffolding without harnesses, driving too fast on icy roads, mocking workplace safety protocols that he viewed as bureaucratic nonsense, which his co-workers and friends admittedly found entertaining. This safari was his first, a birthday trip organized by friends who knew he craved adventure. His group had ignored every safety briefing provided by the lodge staff. When their guide, exhausted from managing the rowdy group all day, passed out in his tent after dinner, he had worked a long shift and later told the investigators that he accidentally left the open-sided Land Cruiser unlocked with the keys still in the ignition. Around 10 p.m., Tomasz convinced 3 friends to take the unattended vehicle and search for lions themselves. They grabbed a handheld spotlight from the equipment shed and climbed into the open Land Cruiser, none of them sober enough to fully appreciate the risk. Tomasz took the wheel, and they lurched out of the camp without headlights, using only the spotlight to navigate, sweeping the powerful beam across the bush while shouting and laughing. For 20 minutes they drove in aimless circles, spotting only impalas and a startled giraffe. Tomasz grew frustrated, pushing the accelerator harder, jerking the wheel to chase shadows. He failed to notice when the firm dirt track gave way to softer ground near a dry riverbed, a known feeding site for the park's largest lion pride. The vehicle's tires began to slip, losing traction as Tomasz oversteered, trying to point the spotlight toward movement he'd glimpsed through the trees. The African lion is one of nature's most efficient predators. Lions typically hunt in coordinated groups, with females doing most of the killing, and when disturbed during a meal, they become highly aggressive and territorial. Unlike other big cats, lions show little fear of vehicles they've learned to associate with harmless tourists. But when humans exit those vehicles or behave erratically, the lion's perception changes instantly. The Land Cruiser rolled forward into a depression and stalled less than 30 feet from where 11 lions were feeding on a freshly killed buffalo. The spotlight, still clutched by one of the passengers, swept directly across the Pride. Several lions looked up, blood covering their muzzles, their eyes reflecting green in the artificial light. For 3 seconds, nothing moved. Then a large lioness launched herself onto the hood with enough force to dent the metal, her claws scraping for purchase as the vehicle rocked. Chaos erupted immediately. Another lioness, smaller but equally fast, leapt into the rear of the open vehicle. The passengers screamed and scrambled toward the front seats, tangling with each other in blind panic. The lioness in the back swiped at anything that moved, her claws catching fabric and flesh indiscriminately. One friend took a gash across his shoulder that laid the muscle open to the bone. Tomasz, trying to climb over the center console away from the lioness on the hood, lost his footing as the vehicle rocked again. He fell backward, his torso sliding through the gap between the rear seats and the open side of the vehicle. His legs caught on the seat frame, leaving him suspended half in and half out as he desperately tried to pull himself back inside. 2 lionesses converged on him simultaneously. The first clamped her jaws around his skull, her canines puncturing through the temporal bone with an audible crack that his friends would later describe to investigators. The second seized his abdomen, her teeth sinking deep into the soft tissue below his rib cage. Tomasz's screams were immediate and piercing, then suddenly wet and gurgling as blood filled his throat. The lionesses began pulling in opposite directions, their combined strength easily overcoming any resistance. Tomasz's body was yanked completely from the vehicle, slamming against the rear tire and axle as they dragged him. The lioness gripping his head shook violently, the same motion they used to break the necks of smaller prey. 3 more lions approached from the feeding site, attracted by the commotion and the scent of fresh blood. They began biting at his legs and torso, pulling chunks of flesh away while he was still alive. His friends reported that his screams lasted approximately 30 seconds before becoming weak, choking sounds. Within another 20 seconds, there was silence, except for the sounds of feeding, the wet tearing of tissue, the crunch of bone, the low growls of lions competing for position. The entire attack, from first contact to cessation of movement, took less than 2 minutes. One passenger managed to reach the vehicle's radio after the lions had dragged Tomasz's body roughly 40 feet away. Rangers from the main lodge arrived minutes later after the call was relayed through the main post, and a night response team was assembled, by which time the Pride had dispersed into the darkness, leaving behind what remained of Tomasz Kurek scattered across a 20-foot radius. The park coroner's report noted the cause of death as exsanguination and traumatic shock, secondary to multiple large predator bites. The 3 surviving tourists were treated for minor lacerations and severe psychological trauma before being fined by Zimbabwean authorities for vehicle theft, trespassing in a protected area, and endangering wildlife. They were deported shortly afterward following expedited processing by authorities. It was June 22nd, 2018, in the dense riverine forests of Kruger National Park, South Africa, where ancient trees create cathedral-like canopies over winding waterways. The park spans nearly 7,700 square miles of pristine African wilderness, home to the Big Five and countless other species that draw visitors from around the world. During winter months, reduced vegetation provides excellent game viewing opportunities, but also increases predator activity as animals concentrate around permanent water sources. 38-year-old Everett Collins had been guiding safaris through Kruger for 15 years, building an impeccable reputation for wildlife knowledge and tourist safety. The experienced guide was leading the Morrison family from Ohio on their first African safari, a dream vacation they had planned for years. The American tourists consisted of parents aged 45 and 42, along with their 2 children aged 12 and 9, who had specifically requested seeing big cats during their week-long stay. Everett supported his elderly mother and funded his younger sister's university education through his guiding income, making client satisfaction crucial. That morning, radio reports had mentioned an injured leopard in the area, but such sightings were common and rarely posed direct threats to guided tours. The Morrison family had expressed disappointment at not yet spotting a leopard after 3 days of game drives, putting pressure on Everett to deliver the complete Big Five experience. The African leopard stands as one of the continent's most elusive and dangerous predators, with males weighing up to 200 pounds and possessing incredible strength that allows them to drag prey twice their weight into trees. These solitary hunters are equipped with powerful jaws, capable of crushing bone, retractable claws that serve as climbing aids and weapons, and exceptional night vision that makes them formidable nocturnal predators. Leopards are known for their stealth, patience, and ability to remain motionless for hours before striking. When wounded or cornered, they become extremely aggressive and unpredictable, often attacking with desperate ferocity that makes them more dangerous than healthy specimens. The attack occurred when Everett discovered fresh leopard tracks in the soft sand beside a seasonal riverbed. The tracks were large and deep, indicating a substantial male, but irregular spacing and occasional drag marks suggested the animal was injured. Against standard operating procedures, Everett decided to investigate on foot while the Morrison family remained safely in the Land Rover. He assured them the reconnaissance would be brief and grabbed his radio and emergency flare, leaving his rifle secured in the vehicle as park regulations required when tourists were present. The tracks led deeper into the forest, where massive sycamore and jackalberry trees created dense overhead cover. Everett followed the trail for a little over 600 feet, noting broken vegetation and occasional blood spots that confirmed his suspicions about the leopard's condition. The experienced guide moved carefully through the undergrowth, scanning for movement while listening for sounds that might indicate the cat's presence. The 140-pound male leopard had positioned himself roughly 20 feet above the game trail in the thick branches of a massive sycamore tree. His spotted coat blended perfectly with the dappled shadows, rendering him virtually invisible from ground level. The wounded predator had been tracking Everett's approach through scent and sound, waiting for the optimal moment to strike. As Everett paused to examine a particularly clear paw print, the leopard launched himself from the overhead branch in a calculated ambush. The predator's powerful hindquarters propelled him through the air in a controlled descent. Front claws extended and jaws open wide. Everett heard rustling leaves above and began looking up, but the leopard struck before he could react. The cat's full weight crashed down onto Everett's back and shoulders, driving him face first into the forest floor. The leopard's rear claws immediately began raking down Everett's back, shredding through his khaki shirt and deep into muscle tissue beneath. Simultaneously, the predator's jaws clamped down on the back of Everett's neck, sharp canine teeth penetrating the cervical vertebrae with crushing force. Everett attempted to roll over and dislodge his attacker, but the leopard's grip remained secure. The cat's powerful jaw muscles applied devastating pressure to the guide's neck, while his claws continued their destructive work on Everett's torso. The wounded leopard's desperation drove him to unusual aggression. His jaws worked methodically, crushing vertebrae and severing the spinal cord that controlled Everett's motor functions. Within several minutes, Everett's struggles ceased as spinal trauma and blood loss took their toll. The leopard maintained his grip for additional minutes, ensuring the perceived threat was eliminated. The entire attack lasted approximately 6 minutes from initial contact to fatal conclusion. Everett Collins died from severe cervical trauma and exsanguination. Parks later confirmed that the leopard would not be euthanized, stating that the animal had reacted defensively due to injury and perceived threat, consistent with park policy for non-predatory attacks. A formal review was opened into protocol breaches after it was confirmed that Everett had left the vehicle to track an injured predator without an authorized rifle escort. It was August 11th, 2014, and the African sun hung heavy over the private game reserve outside Hoedspruit, Limpopo, South Africa. The afternoon air shimmered with heat as a safari vehicle rolled slowly along a dirt track, its passengers scanning the acacia-dotted landscape for wildlife. Marek Volin was a 46-year-old Czech-born mechanical technician who had spent the past decade working short-term industrial contracts throughout Germany. This safari was his first trip to Africa, booked as a budget add-on during a 3-day business layover in Johannesburg. His co-workers had described him as practical and direct, someone who approached problems with mechanical logic. Fellow tourists on the safari would later tell investigators that Marek had been dismissive of safety protocols from the start, repeatedly commenting that predators were lazy during the day and that guides exaggerated dangers to maintain control. He carried a small handheld camcorder and had been filming constantly, stating he wanted to capture rare moments his friends back home would never see. His confidence around wildlife bordered on recklessness, and he had already been reminded twice to remain seated during animal sightings. The reserve stretched across 15,000 acres of bushveld, characterized by tall golden grass, scattered thorn trees, and rocky outcroppings. African lions are among the most formidable predators on the continent, with females typically weighing between 260 and 400 pounds and possessing explosive speed over short distances. Their hunting strategy relies on ambush and concealment. Female lions do the majority of hunting for their pride, using tall grass and terrain features to remain invisible until the moment of attack. Their bite force exceeds 650 pounds per square inch, concentrated through powerful jaws designed to crush vertebrae and windpipes. Most critically, lionesses with cubs are exceptionally dangerous, their maternal instinct overriding any natural wariness of humans or vehicles. The safari vehicle had stopped after the guide spotted a lion cub partially tangled in thorn brush, approximately 40 yards from the track. The young animal was bleating loudly, its cries carrying across the afternoon stillness. The guide immediately warned everyone to remain seated and explained in clear terms that the mother was almost certainly nearby, hidden in the grass. He radioed to other guides in the area, informing them of the situation and their stationary position. Marek began filming the cub, zooming in on its struggles. After several minutes, he became visibly agitated, loudly insisting that the cub looked injured and that someone should intervene. Other tourists told him to listen to the guide. The guide repeated his warning, explaining that approaching would likely trigger a defensive attack and that the cub was not actually trapped, merely momentarily caught. Marek continued arguing, his camera still recording, stating that the guide's job was to protect tourists, not abandon helpless animals. Then, despite the guide's explicit command to stay seated, Marek opened the side door and stepped out onto the dirt, keeping his camera running as he walked toward the cub. The recovered footage showed everything. As Marek approached to within 15 yards, the cub abruptly stopped vocalizing. The video shook slightly as he stepped closer, using his foot to brush aside low branches. The camera's microphone picked up the guide shouting for him to get back in the vehicle. Then, barely audible beneath the sound of Marek's breathing, there was a low, rumbling growl. The lioness struck in a rapid defensive lunge to recover her cub, exploding from grass that had concealed her completely. She covered the distance in less than 2 seconds, launching herself at Marek's back with her full 330-pound weight. The impact drove him face-first into the ground. Screams erupted from the safari vehicle as the lioness clamped her massive jaws onto the back of Marek's neck and upper spine, her teeth penetrating deep into tissue and vertebrae. She dragged him several feet through the dirt, her powerful neck muscles shaking him. Marek's arms moved weakly, his fingers scraping at the ground in futile attempts to crawl. The lioness repositioned her grip, biting down again with crushing force on his shoulder and upper back. Blood darkened the earth beneath them. The cub, now silent, retreated deeper into the brush. The lioness delivered a final bite to Marek's neck, a technique lions use to sever the spinal cord. Johan radioed reserve control immediately, reporting a fatal attack and requesting armed backup. The lioness remained near the body for several minutes before slowly walking back into the tall grass still watching the vehicle. Armed rangers arrived 18 minutes later, approaching cautiously after confirming the lioness had withdrawn to a distance. Marek Volin was pronounced dead at the scene. The coroner's report listed cause of death as massive trauma to the cervical spine and neck, with secondary injuries including puncture wounds to the upper back, shoulder, and skull. Severe blood loss and spinal cord transection indicated death likely occurred within 2 to 3 minutes of the initial attack. The reserve issued a brief statement emphasizing that the deceased had violated explicit safety protocols. No criminal charges were filed. Investigators secured the original camera media, and the device was later returned to Marek's family after review. It was September 3rd, 2016, the South African high-veld winter giving way to early spring warmth as midday sun beat down on Kruger National Park. In full view of multiple witnesses and a running dashcam, a multi-ton animal decides a human presence is a threat worth eliminating. Leanne de Kock was a 52-year-old primary school administrator from Bloemfontein, known among her colleagues for her methodical approach to managing student records and her tendency to defer to authority figures. She had never been on safari before. Her sister-in-law had organized the extended family trip, booking a guided day tour through one of the park's smaller operators. Leanne had expressed nervousness about the wildlife, but trusted the guide implicitly, believing his experience would keep them safe. That morning, she had asked several times whether it was safe to be so close to the animals, but when reassured by the guide, she nodded and said nothing further. African bush elephants are the largest land animals on Earth, with bulls weighing up to 13,000 pounds and standing over 12 feet tall at the shoulder. Their trunks are composed of thousands of dense muscle bundles, capable of lifting several hundred pounds while remaining precise enough to grasp small vegetation. Despite their size, elephants can charge at speeds of up to 25 miles per hour. Male elephants experience must, a physiological state marked by temporal gland secretions running down the sides of the face, continuous urine dribbling, heightened restlessness, and sharply increased aggression. During these episodes, which can last months, bulls become unpredictable and hyper-aggressive, attacking anything perceived as a threat. The guide had stopped just outside a designated picnic area, despite posted warnings stating that exiting vehicles beyond marked zones was prohibited. A bull elephant was visible approximately 70 yards away, partially obscured by the trees. Several family members had pointed it out immediately. The animal was feeding, its ears loosely flapping against its body as it cooled itself in the heat. The guide assured everyone it was fine, that the elephant was far enough away and calm. A family in a nearby SUV had parked to observe from inside their vehicle, their dashcam running as they recorded the scenery. As Leanne's group unpacked sandwiches and coolers, spreading a blanket on the ground, the elephant slowly turned its massive head toward the vehicles. Its ears, which had been relaxed against its body, suddenly spread outward and remained rigid, a warning signal that precedes aggression in elephants. The dashcam footage, later provided to park authorities, captured the charge from start to impact, showing what happened next with devastating clarity. The elephant suddenly charged, its ears flared wide, trunk initially held tight against its chest. People heard the sound of its approach, a low rumbling bellow combined with the thunder of feet striking packed earth. They reacted chaotically. Several family members lunged for open vehicle doors, while others screamed and stumbled backward in panic. Leanne froze near the rear door of the tour van, approximately 8 feet from safety. Whether she was paralyzed by fear or simply unable to process the speed of the charge, she remained motionless for nearly 2 seconds, an eternity in the context of a charging elephant. The bull reached her in moments, its trunk snapping outward to shove and hook her around the torso just below the ribcage. The force lifted her completely off the ground, her legs dangling as she was raised roughly 5 feet in the air. The elephant slammed her against the side of the SUV with tremendous force. The sound of impact, a sharp metallic deformation followed by a dull, heavy thud, The vehicle's side panel visibly dented inward. The elephant yanked her back and drove her forward again, using its head and shoulder, her body striking the vehicle a second time with even greater force. Her head snapped violently on impact. She fell to the ground when the animal disengaged, landing in a crumpled heap. The footage showed her attempting to rise, one arm pushing weakly against the dirt before the elephant surged forward again, ramming her prone body with its skull and upper tusk base, sending her sliding several feet across the clearing. The bull then stepped forward and pressed a massive front foot down onto her upper torso, pinning her briefly against the ground. After approximately 8 seconds, the elephant stepped back as the guide hesitated before finally revving the engine and shouting, the sudden noise drawing the animal's attention away. Leanne had stopped moving by then, her body twisted at an unnatural angle. A German tourist in the nearby SUV called emergency services. Park rangers arrived minutes later, but Leanne showed no signs of life when they reached her. The medical examiner's report listed massive internal trauma as the cause of death, including multiple fractured ribs, a ruptured spleen, severe head trauma, and a broken neck. The guide's permit was suspended indefinitely following investigation by authorities. Leanne's family declined all media interviews, but released a brief statement through their attorney requesting privacy. The dashcam footage was sealed under court order, was used as evidence during the investigation. It was August 14, 2015, in the dense forests of Gombe Stream National Park, Tanzania, where towering mahogany and fig trees create a natural laboratory that has hosted decades of groundbreaking primatology research. The 52-square-kilometer park, established along the shores of Lake Tanganyika, serves as one of Africa's most important chimpanzee research sites. During the dry season, territorial boundaries between rival chimpanzee communities become increasingly volatile as competition for limited food resources intensifies. 29-year-old Caleb Warren had arrived from the University of California to conduct behavioral research on inter-community aggression for his doctoral dissertation. The ambitious primatologist had been studying the Kasekela chimpanzee community for 8 months, documenting their territorial disputes with neighboring groups. Joseph Mwalimu, his 56-year-old local research assistant, had trained under early Gombe researchers and possessed invaluable knowledge of chimpanzee behavior patterns. Joseph had repeatedly warned Caleb about entering disputed territory alone, emphasizing the importance of maintaining radio contact and working in pairs. Recent equipment failures had left their communication system unreliable, but Caleb pressed forward with his observations despite protocol violations. The experienced assistant noted unusual aggressive behavior in both communities, including increased patrol activity and territorial marking that indicated heightened tensions. Chimpanzees represent humanity's closest living relatives, sharing 98.8% of our DNA, but possess physical capabilities that far exceed human strength. Adult males weigh between 90 and 130 pounds while standing only 4 feet tall. Their powerful arms, designed for knuckle walking and tree climbing, can deliver devastating blows, while their sharp canine teeth serve as formidable weapons during aggressive encounters. Chimpanzees live in complex social hierarchies where territorial disputes can escalate into coordinated warfare between communities. When threatened or defending territory, males will attack perceived intruders using their superior strength and agility to overwhelm opponents. The attack began when Caleb reached a disputed feeding site where the Kasekela community typically gathered. He positioned his observation equipment about 100 feet from the main feeding tree, maintaining what he considered a safe distance based on previous interactions. The situation escalated when several agitated Kasekela males arrived at the feeding area, already in a heightened state due to recent territorial conflicts. The alpha male, a powerful 120-pound chimpanzee called Titan by the research team, noticed Caleb's presence during his patrol of the disputed territory. In the animal's heightened state of aggression, the human researcher represented a potential threat to be investigated. Titan's distinctive pant hoots shifted to aggressive barks as he began moving toward Caleb's position, his hair standing erect to maximize his intimidating appearance. Caleb attempted to retreat slowly while maintaining visual contact with the approaching alpha male, following standard protocols for de-escalating chimpanzee encounters. However, his movement triggered an aggressive response from Titan, who interpreted the researcher's presence as a territorial invasion. Two additional adult males, drawn by their leader's aggressive displays, began moving toward Caleb's position from different angles. The attack began when Titan charged directly at Caleb, closing the roughly 100-foot distance in just a few seconds with explosive forward momentum. The alpha male struck Caleb in the chest with tremendous force, his muscular arms delivering a blow that knocked the researcher backward into a tree trunk. The impact stunned Caleb and prevented effective defensive action as he struggled to regain his footing. Before Caleb could recover, Titan pounced on his prone form, using his powerful hands to strike repeatedly at the researcher's head and face. The chimpanzee's sharp canine teeth inflicted deep puncture wounds on Caleb's scalp and neck, while his strong fingers gripped and twisted with devastating effect. The two additional males joined the assault, focusing their attacks on Caleb's arms and torso as he attempted to protect his vital areas. The coordinated attack targeted areas that chimpanzees instinctively focus on during aggressive encounters: the face, hands, and extremities. Titan's powerful grip caused severe facial trauma and lacerations, while the other males inflicted deep wounds on Caleb's arms and hands. The assault continued for approximately 4 minutes, with the chimpanzees maintaining their aggressive behavior until Caleb's movements ceased. Once he stopped moving, the males disengaged almost immediately, consistent with defensive chimpanzee behavior, where the goal is to neutralize a threat rather than kill. Caleb Warren died from severe head trauma, massive blood loss, and multiple lacerations caused by the sustained assault. Joseph discovered Caleb's body several hours later, when the researcher failed to return to base camp, and radio contact could not be established. Tanzanian authorities launched an investigation into the incident, reviewing safety protocols for researchers working in disputed chimpanzee territories. The University of California implemented stricter guidelines for fieldwork communication systems and mandatory partner protocols. Authorities confirmed that no action would be taken against the chimpanzee community, as the incident was classified as a territorial defense response rather than an unprovoked attack. It was November 3, 2016, in the remote waterways of the Okavango Delta, Botswana, where seasonal floods create a vast inland oasis spanning nearly 6,000 square miles of pristine wilderness. The delta's intricate network of channels, lagoons, and floodplains supports one of Africa's most diverse ecosystems, including large populations of Nile crocodiles that thrive in the permanent water sources. During the dry season, receding waters concentrate wildlife around remaining channels, creating ideal hunting conditions for apex predators. 33-year-old Maya Peterson had previously led anti-poaching operations with the Kenya Wildlife Service before being seconded to a cross-border conservation task group operating in Botswana to combat the surge in rhino killings. Her team included David Mokoena, a 41-year-old local tracker with 20 years of experience navigating the waterways, and Sarah Chen, a 26-year-old junior conservationist who looked up to Maya as a mentor. That morning, fresh evidence suggested rhino poachers had established a temporary camp on the opposite bank of a flooded channel, about 110 feet across the swollen waterway. David had advised waiting for boat transport, but their radio equipment had malfunctioned during the night, preventing communication with headquarters. Maya made the decision to cross immediately, fearing the poachers would escape if they delayed. The team's inflatable boat had been damaged by thorns during their approach, leaving wading as the only option. The Nile crocodile stands as Africa's largest freshwater predator, with adult males reaching lengths of 20 feet and weights exceeding 1,500 pounds. These reptiles possess one of the most powerful bite forces in the animal kingdom, capable of exerting over 3,700 pounds of pressure per square inch through jaws lined with 68 sharp, conical teeth. Their muscular tails serve as both propulsion systems and devastating weapons, while their armored hide provides protection from most threats. Nile crocodiles are opportunistic ambush predators that typically hunt from concealed positions near water's edge, striking when prey ventures within range. When attacking, they employ their signature death roll technique, spinning rapidly in the water to disorient prey and cause maximum tissue damage. The attack occurred when Maya entered the murky water wearing her field gear, including boots and an equipment vest that restricted her movement. The channel bottom consisted of soft mud and decaying vegetation that made footing treacherous, while the current proved stronger than anticipated from shore observation. Maya had progressed a little over 60 feet into the crossing when she encountered deeper water that required swimming rather than wading. A 16-foot Nile crocodile had been resting near a fallen tree trunk, about 100 feet downstream from the crossing point. The large predator detected the unusual splashing and movement in his territory, reacting to disturbance as a potential feeding opportunity. The crocodile began moving upstream along the channel bottom, using the muddy water for concealment as he approached the crossing area. The attack came as Maya struggled against the current in the deepest part of the channel. The crocodile approached from her left side, his massive form barely visible beneath the murky water until the moment of contact. His powerful tail provided propulsion, while his streamlined body moved through the water with surprising speed for such a large predator. The crocodile's jaws clamped down on Maya's torso just below her equipment vest. The crushing force broke multiple ribs and likely punctured a lung, allowing only a strained gasp before the predator rolled violently, initiating a rapid series of death rolls. Instead of a single prolonged spin, the crocodile executed multiple fast rotations in succession, a brutal, instinctive method meant to rip and disable rather than subdue. Maya's vest straps caught in the crocodile's teeth and body during the rolls, preventing her from breaking free or getting her head above water. She lost consciousness within moments. The rolling continued briefly even after she stopped resisting, causing additional trauma as broken ribs drove into her organs and rapid blood loss set in. David and Sarah attempted to reach Maya from the shoreline, throwing branches and shouting, but the crocodile showed no intention of releasing his prey. After completing multiple death rolls, the crocodile dragged Maya's motionless form toward the riverbank, where he could feed undisturbed. The entire attack lasted approximately 3 minutes from initial contact to when Maya disappeared beneath the surface. Maya Peterson died from massive internal trauma, drowning, and blood loss. David and Sarah immediately began emergency procedures, but their damaged radio equipment prevented immediate rescue coordination. Botswana wildlife authorities launched an investigation into the incident, reviewing safety protocols for anti-poaching operations in crocodile-inhabited waters. The international conservation community mourned Maya's loss, while her family established a foundation promoting wildlife protection officer safety. Officials confirmed that no action would be taken against the crocodile, noting that it had acted on predatory instinct in a known high-risk channel. While Maya Peterson's conservation mission ended tragically in the Delta's dangerous waters, these 5 cases serve as stark reminders that wildlife remains unpredictable and even experienced professionals can fall victim to nature's most dangerous predators. It was October 9th, 2017, the Chobe River reflecting the last golden light of evening as the luxury safari barge drifted along the Botswana border. Laughter and clinking glasses echoed across the water, drowning out the distant grunts and snorts that any local would have recognized as a warning. Silas Mertens was a 31-year-old corporate sales representative from Bremen, Germany, celebrating the biggest achievement of his career, a promotion to regional director that had eluded him for 3 years. Known among colleagues for his competitive nature and tendency to escalate any gathering into a contest of bravado, Silas had chosen this safari package specifically for its reputation as a party destination rather than a wildlife experience. Silas had invited 4 colleagues, all younger men who looked up to his sales record and lifestyle. By the 3rd day, the group had established a rhythm of daytime game drives, followed by heavy drinking on the barge each evening. The boat's crew had already warned them twice about noise levels disturbing wildlife. What Silas and his friends failed to understand was that they were floating in the territory of Africa's deadliest large animal. Hippos are responsible for more human deaths in Africa than many other large species. Despite their herbivorous diet, hippos are intensely territorial and aggressive, particularly at dusk when they emerge from water to graze. Males can reach several thousand pounds and can exert bite forces enough to cause catastrophic blunt and crushing trauma. Their massive canine tusks can approach 20 inches, and their jaws open extremely wide, creating a bone-crushing trap. That evening, the group had consumed significant quantities of gin and local beer. By sunset, Silas was visibly intoxicated, his speech slurred and movements uncoordinated. He began bragging about his swimming abilities, claiming he had competed at regional level as a teenager. When one friend jokingly doubted he could make it to shore, the challenge became inevitable. The boat captain, a Botswanan man named Kruger, intervened immediately. He explained in clear English that hippos were active at this hour and that the murky water near the vegetation line was particularly dangerous. He pointed to several sets of eyes and nostrils visible on the surface about 50 yards upstream, adult hippos monitoring their territory. Kruger stated plainly that entering the water would likely result in death. 2 crew members echoed this warning, but Silas laughed them off, accusing them of trying to ruin his celebration. His friends, equally drunk, began chanting encouragement. Despite attempts to physically restrain him, a half-hearted grab slipped free as he pushed past the crew. Silas climbed onto the barge's railing at approximately 7:43 p.m., according to the captain's later testimony. Silas stood on the rail for several seconds, arms spread wide, then launched himself feet first into the Chobe River. The splash sent ripples across the calm surface as he surfaced, whooping in triumph. He began swimming toward shore with clumsy strokes, making it perhaps 15 feet from the barge. The attack happened with shocking speed. A massive hippo, likely a territorial male that had been submerged near the barge's hull, surged upward directly beneath Silas. Witnesses described the water exploding as nearly 2 tons of animal rocketed to the surface. The hippo's broad back struck Silas from below, launching his body partially out of the water. The impact alone likely caused catastrophic spinal injury, bending him backward at an unnatural angle. Before gravity could pull him back down, the creature clamped down on Silas's midsection with crushing force, its massive canine teeth puncturing completely through his torso. Witnesses heard the distinct sound of bones breaking, described as multiple loud cracks, like thick branches snapping. Silas screamed once before the hippo's jaws compressed further. The water around them turned crimson. The hippo maintained its grip for approximately 8 seconds, shaking its head violently from side to side, a behavior used to dismember threats. Silas's body went limp, arms dangling as the hippo held him partially clear of the water for a moment. Then, just as suddenly, the hippo submerged. It pulled Silas beneath the surface in one smooth motion, leaving only expanding circles of blood-stained water and floating matter. The disturbance continued underwater for several seconds before the river went still, a delay later attributed to poor visibility and the presence of multiple hippos. Captain Kruger immediately radioed the emergency services at 7:44 p.m., Rangers arrived by boat 25 minutes later, but recovery efforts were postponed due to darkness and active hippos in the area. Silas's body was recovered the following morning, found wedged beneath a submerged log over 100 yards downstream. The preliminary coroner's report documented massive crush injuries to the pelvis and lower abdomen, with near-complete destruction of internal organs. Multiple rib fractures, a severed spine, and evidence of drowning were noted. Cause of death was listed as massive trauma and exsanguination. After an investigation that found multiple safety violations, regulators revoked the vessel's alcohol service license and moved to suspend its operating permit. Silas's friends declined all interview requests, and his employer released a brief statement expressing condolences. It was March 17, 2016. And the late afternoon sun cast dancing reflections across the pristine channels of the Okavango Delta as 29-year-old James Okafor unloaded his fishing gear from their rented Mokoro canoe. The massive inland delta, formed where the Okavango River spreads across the Kalahari Desert, created one of the world's most unique ecosystems, with seasonal floods transforming 15,000 square kilometers of desert into a water wonderland teeming with wildlife. James had driven up from Gaborone with his girlfriend Sarah for a weekend fishing adventure, eager to show off his supposed angling skills. James worked as an auto mechanic in Botswana's capital city, where his reputation for fixing broken engines was the source of considerable local pride. He had grown up fishing in the crocodile-infested waters of the Limpopo River system, and believed that years of dodging danger made him somehow invincible. He casually dismissed guide warnings, convinced that his past luck made him practically untouchable. In fact, he had joked with Sarah that hippos were just big cows that could be outsmarted with a few swift kicks. The couple had joined a small camping expedition organized by a local tour operator, with their campsite located on a small island surrounded by reed beds and shallow channels. Their guide had provided the standard safety briefing about hippos and crocodiles, emphasizing the importance of staying close to designated areas and avoiding water entry during dawn and dusk hours, when dangerous animals were most active. James had nodded and smiled, but as soon as the guide turned away, he was already scheming to explore a shortcut fishing spot he had noticed from the canoe. What James failed to appreciate was that the Okavango Delta supported one of Africa's largest hippopotamus populations, with several thousand individuals using the waterways as permanent habitat. The seasonal flooding patterns created complex territories that shifted throughout the year, making it impossible for visitors to predict where dangerous encounters might occur. Hippopotamus are among Africa's most dangerous animals, responsible for more human deaths than any other large mammal on the continent. Adult bulls can weigh up to 4,000 pounds and reach lengths of 13 feet, with massive jaws capable of opening 150 degrees to reveal canine teeth that can grow up to 20 inches long. Despite their bulky appearance, hippos can run 30 miles per hour on land and move with astonishing speed through shallow water. They are highly territorial, particularly during mating season, and will aggressively defend their established routes between feeding areas and water refuges. The attack began when James, ignoring Sarah's repeated reminders, waded into what appeared to be a shallow lagoon near their campsite to cast his line toward a promising reed bed where he had spotted fish jumping. Sarah was setting up their tent approximately 50 meters away, occasionally glancing towards the water with growing unease as James pranced around in the mud wearing flip-flops. The area James had chosen was actually a well-established hippo path, connecting deeper channels with shoreline grazing areas. James had waited approximately 15 meters from shore when a massive bull hippo surfaced just 20 meters away, his enormous head breaking the surface with a loud splash. The animal had been resting in the deeper channel and was beginning his evening movement toward feeding areas when he encountered the human intruder in his established territory. James froze, waving his fishing rod like a wand. The bull hippo's response was immediate and aggressive, his territorial instincts triggered by James's presence in the shallow water that served as his primary access route. The massive animal moved toward James with deceptive speed, his powerful legs propelling his more than 3,000-pound body through the water. James attempted to run backward, slipping over a submerged root and flailing his rod. Every step only sank him deeper into the mucky bottom. The hippo reached James when he was still 10 meters from safety, jaws opening to reveal the full extent of his formidable dental weaponry. The hippo's massive jaws clamped down on James's torso, the enormous canine teeth puncturing through his ribcage and into vital organs with crushing force. The sheer weight of the bite lifted James partially out of the water as the hippo shook his head violently from side to side. James's screams were cut short as the hippo released his initial grip only to bite down again, this time targeting James's shoulder and upper chest. The second bite caused additional massive trauma. Breaking bones and tearing through muscle tissue, blood spread rapidly across the water's surface. The hippo continued its assault, using its enormous head to push James under the water repeatedly. The attack continued for less than a minute as the hippo ensured the threat was neutralized. James's struggles weakened rapidly as blood loss and repeated submersion took their toll. The hippo finally dragged James's body towards slightly deeper water near the reed bed before releasing him and retreating into the maze of channels. Sarah screamed and waved frantically for help, but the hippo had disappeared into the reeds. The tour guide radioed emergency services immediately, but the delta's complex channels and the danger of additional hippo encounters made immediate recovery impossible. Professional hunters and park rangers arrived within 2 hours and began a careful search. James's body was located the following morning, partially submerged in shallow water near the reed bed, approximately 30 meters from the initial attack site. The medical examination revealed that James had died from a combination of massive trauma to his torso and vital organs, severe blood loss, and drowning during the repeated submersions. The investigation concluded that James had entered a known hippo territory during the animal's active period, with his presence in the shallow water triggering a lethal territorial response. James's death devastated his family and drew attention to the dangers of human overconfidence in wildlife tourism. His girlfriend Sarah struggled with survivor's guilt, but became an advocate for enhanced safety protocols. It was June 18, 2013, and the afternoon heat pressed down on a game reserve in Moremi like a physical weight, the kind that made even the predators sluggish. A guide and 4 American guests sat in the vehicle behind him, cameras ready, unaware that in the next 3 minutes they would witness a horrific spectacle. Kabelo Enthane was a 41-year-old safari guide from Maun, Botswana, with 12 years of experience leading tours through some of Africa's most dangerous terrain. His colleagues knew him as skilled but reckless, the kind of guide who took unnecessary risks to earn better tips and 5-star reviews. Kabelo's reputation for dramatic animal encounters had made him popular with tourists seeking authentic African experiences, though park rangers had issued formal written warnings to him twice in the past year about approaching wildlife on foot in direct violation of park policy prohibiting vehicle exits during active game drives. This overconfidence had led him to exit vehicles for closer photographs, to approach elephants during musk, and to dismiss protocol as overcautious nonsense designed for inexperienced guides. The afternoon drive with the American family was meant to be routine, but Kabelo had promised them something special, something worthy of their expensive premium safari package. Earlier that morning, their ranger station had reported increased lion activity in the sector, 3 prides converging near the Kwai River boundary. The radio dispatch specifically mentioned a large male displaying aggressive posturing toward vehicles. Kabelo had listened to the broadcast, verbally dismissed it as typical dry season behavior to the tourists. When his guests spotted the lion an hour later, he saw an opportunity. One of the guests had complained that all their photographs so far were taken from too far away. Kabelo promised to get them something remarkable. African lions are apex apex predators capable of taking down prey 5 times their size, with males weighing up to 550 pounds and possessing strength 10 times that of an adult human. Male lions, particularly those in their prime, are territorial and unpredictable, tolerance for intrusion minimal even when appearing relaxed. Studies of lion attacks consistently show that perceived threats to territory or space trigger explosive aggression with virtually no warning period. He parked the Land Cruiser 30 yards from the acacia and studied the lion for several minutes, leaving the engine running and a guest in the driver's seat. The animal's tail began a rapid side-to-side flagging, sign of escalating irritation that Cabello interpreted to the tourists as drowsiness. And the lion shifted position, exposing his scarred flank. Cabello made his decision. He grabbed a walking stick from the vehicle and told his guests to ready their cameras. As Cabello walked toward the lion, the animal's ears swiveled forward. The tail flagging intensified, switching from side to side in sharp movements. Cabello maintained his approach, stick raised. He closed to within 15 feet. The lion's eyes locked onto him with a fixed, unblinking stare, ears angled forward and rigid. Cabello stopped and turned slightly to gesture toward the vehicle, encouraging his guests to photograph this moment. The lion rose to its feet in a single fluid motion, head lowering, shoulders bunching. Cabello's smile vanished. He began backing away, raising the stick higher, his voice shifting from confident to commanding. The lion's lips peeled back, revealing yellowed canines. For 3 suspended seconds, neither moved. The charge covered 15 feet in less than 2 seconds. The lion's frame hit Cabello, slamming him backward into the dirt. His stick flew from his hand. The lion's jaws clamped around his left thigh, 4-inch canines punching through muscle and scraping bone. Cabello's scream cut across the reserve, raw and primal, as the lion shook its head violently, tearing through tissue. The predator dragged him 8 feet, claws raking across Cabello's chest and abdomen, shredding his shirt and the flesh beneath. Blood poured onto the ground, darkening the dust. Cabello's right hand clawed at the dirt, his legs kicking weakly. The lion released his thigh only to bite down on his shoulder. Within the first several seconds, the damage became unsurvivable. The lion bit again at Cabello's neck, its massive head blocking him from view. Blood sprayed in arterial pulses, spattering the lion's mane. Cabello's movements became spasmodic, then ceased entirely. The remaining moments were not a struggle, but a brief sequence of repositioning and tearing. Lion stood over the body, panting, blood dripping from its muzzle, before padding back toward the acacia tree. The tourists froze for several seconds before managing to key the vehicle radio. The delay meant the call went out approximately 7 minutes after the attack ended. Park rangers responded within 19 minutes, approaching with tranquilizer rifles supported by armed backup. By then, Cabello had been dead for minutes. The medical examiner's report documented that the cause of death was exsanguination, secondary to multiple penetrating injuries from lion attack. The lion was tranquilized and relocated to a remote section of the reserve, a decision justified by officials due to the absence of prior human aggression and the determination that the attack was territorial rather than predatory. Cabello's family received a settlement, but no public acknowledgement of his employment history. The company's insurance carrier negotiated with the American tourists for their silence. It was July 3rd, 2016, and the afternoon sun blazed across the savanna of Kruger National Park as a convoy of safari vehicles crawled along the dusty track near Lower Sabi. In the backseat of the third vehicle, 7-year-old Kellen Spears bounced impatiently, his untouched seatbelt hanging loose beside him. Kellen was from Port Elizabeth, the only child of Marcus and Tanya Spears, both avid wildlife photographers who documented their travels across southern Africa. The trip to Kruger was meant to be a birthday celebration for Kellen, who had turned 7 just 2 days earlier. Kellen's preschool teachers had noted multiple behavioral incidents in his file, and neighbors recalled hearing frequent arguments between the boy and his parents. Marcus and Tanya had later admitted that they developed a pattern of giving in to avoid confrontation. That afternoon, their guide had positioned their vehicle at what he considered a safe distance. Before stopping, he had reminded all passengers of park regulations: remain seated, stay quiet, and never exit vehicles under any circumstances. Van Rooyen made the fateful decision to unlock the doors and open windows to improve ventilation in the oppressive heat, a violation of protocol he would later admit to investigators. As the adults focused their cameras on the leopard, Kellen complained loudly about being bored, demanding to know when they could leave. His parents shushed him without turning around. African leopards are solitary ambush predators weighing up to 200 pounds, capable of accelerating from 0 to 36 miles per hour in seconds. Most critically, leopards possess a bite force concentrated through powerful jaw muscles, canines designed to penetrate the skulls and spinal columns of prey. Unlike lions that hunt in open grassland, leopards are stealth killers that strike from concealment, targeting the throat or nape of the neck to sever the airway and major blood vessels. The guide noticed movement in the tree line beyond the leopard, possibly another cat, or perhaps a hyena. Turned his attention away from the interior of the vehicle for no more than 15 seconds to scan with his binoculars. In that brief window, Kellen made his decision. His parents later reported seeing the child unbuckle himself, something he had apparently learned to do despite his parents' belief that he couldn't, and push against the door with both hands. The unlocked door swung open with surprising ease. The initial sound was Kellen's delighted shout as he jumped from the vehicle into the dust. Tanya turned at the noise. She screamed his name. Marcus spun around, his expression showing pure horror as realization dawned. The guide lunged toward the open door, but Kellen was already running toward the bush. He made it approximately 25 feet from the vehicle. The leopard responded with the explosive precision of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. It launched from the branch in a single fluid motion, covering the distance between tree and child in 3 bounding leaps that took less than 2 seconds. Its front legs extended with claws fully deployed. The impact knocked Kellen flat onto his stomach. Leopard's jaws closed around the back of the boy's neck with surgical accuracy, crushing the upper cervical vertebrae and severing the spinal cord. This killing technique, perfected over countless generations, causes near instantaneous paralysis and prevents the prey from crying out or struggling. Kellen made no scream, only a brief, wet, choking sound that several witnesses later told investigators they would never forget. His small arms flailed once, then went limp. The entire attack from first contact to incapacitation lasted approximately 4 seconds. The leopard maintained its grip on Kellen's neck while adjusting its body position, then began the drag. Leopards instinctively remove kills from open areas to prevent theft by lions or hyenas. This one pulled the child's body with shocking ease, moving low and fast toward dense mopane scrub 30 yards away. Marcus had stumbled from the vehicle and was running after them, screaming incoherently. Van Rooyen had already grabbed his radio, shouting for emergency response. The leopard disappeared into the vegetation with Kellen's body, only its tail visible for a brief moment before the thick brush swallowed them completely. The entire sequence from door opening to disappearance into the bush took less than 15 seconds. An armed response team arrived 11 minutes later, but protocol prevented them from entering the dense bush where the leopard had dragged the child. The predator had already done what leopards do, killed efficiently and secured its catch. Search teams equipped with tracking dogs and firearms combed the area for 5 hours before recovering what remained of Kellen's spears in a thicket approximately 200 yards from the attack site. The coroner's preliminary report noted severe trauma to the cervical spine, crushed vertebrae at C2 and C3, massive tissue loss to the neck and upper torso, and death occurring within 1 to 2 minutes of the initial bite through asphyxiation and catastrophic blood loss. The leopard, a female approximately 5 years old, was tracked and euthanized on July 5th. Analysis of stomach contents confirmed she had consumed portions of the victim. Out of respect for the family, South African media provided minimal coverage. It was May 19th. 2015, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the golden grasslands of Chobe National Park. The air hung thick and still as Kabelo Maruti steered his open-sided Land Cruiser toward a cluster of acacia trees where a small herd of Cape buffalo grazed. Kabelo was a 34-year-old safari guide from Kasane, a border town where tourism jobs were coveted and competition fierce. He'd worked for a private company for 3 years, long enough to develop a reputation among the local guiding community as someone who pushed boundaries. His approach to wildlife viewing prioritized client satisfaction over protocol, getting closer than regulations allowed, staying longer than was safe, and frequently dismissing the cautious advice of more experienced guides. That afternoon's group consisted of 6 American tourists on a 4-day photography package. They'd already seen elephants, giraffes, and a distant pride of lions, but several had expressed disappointment at not getting close enough for dramatic shots. Cabello had promised them something special before the day ended, and when he spotted the buffalo herd less than 100 feet from the vehicle track, he saw his opportunity to deliver. Cape buffalo are among Africa's deadliest animals, killing more hunters and guides than any other large mammal. Bulls can weigh 2,000 pounds, stand over 5 feet tall, and have curved horns spanning over 3 feet, fused at the base into a solid shield with sharp points. Unpredictable and quick to retaliate, they have poor eyesight but excellent hearing and can charge up to 30 miles per hour with surprising agility. As Cabello maneuvered the Land Cruiser to within 60 feet of the herd, the tourists began photographing eagerly. Several buffalo raised their heads, staring directly at the vehicle. One particularly large bull separated slightly from the group, positioning himself between the herd and the vehicle. His head lowered incrementally, and his tail began flicking in short, agitated movements. These were textbook warning signs that experienced guides recognized as preludes to charging behavior. But Cabello continued narrating about buffalo's social structure as if nothing was amiss. After approximately 10 minutes of viewing, Cabello announced he needed to relieve himself. He turned off the engine, a clear violation of basic safari protocol, and stepped down from the driver's side, walking around to the rear of the vehicle. The tourists continued filming through the open sides of the Land Cruiser, their cameras fixed on the herd, inadvertently documenting what would happen next. The bull buffalo remained stationary, approximately 50 feet away, head still lowered and tail flicking with increasing frequency. Cabello moved to a spot just behind the rear tire, partially visible to the tourists and fully exposed to the herd. The attack began without additional warning. The bull buffalo exploded into motion, closing the distance in about 3 seconds. Cabello turned at the sound of hoofbeats, his body language shifting from casual to panicked in the final instant before impact. The buffalo's right horn caught him just below the rib cage, the force of the 2,000-pound animal at full charge driving the horn through his abdomen and out near his lower back. His feet left the ground as the animal's forward momentum carried him upward, a grotesque display of raw power. The buffalo shook its head violently, flinging Cabello sideways where he landed heavily on the hard-packed earth, roughly 8 feet away. He tried to rise, one hand clutching at the massive wound in his abdomen, but the buffalo was already circling back. Tourists watched in horror as the animal's front hooves came down on Cabello's chest and shoulder with sickening force. The buffalo stomped repeatedly, each blow crushing bone and driving Cabello's body deeper into the dust. The tourists' screams filled the audio track, their voices raw with horror as they pounded frantically on the metal window frames. Several shouted for someone to start the vehicle, but none knew how to start or drive the Land Cruiser. The sustained attack lasted roughly 40 seconds before the buffalo finally stepped back, regarding Cabello's motionless form briefly before trotting back to rejoin the herd, which had barely moved throughout the incident. One of the tourists, a man from Colorado with emergency medical training, managed to radio another guide on the backup communication device Cabello had left in the front seat. Park medics arrived 14 minutes later in a rapid response vehicle, but Cabello had already died from massive internal hemorrhaging. The preliminary field examination noted multiple fractured ribs, a punctured liver, collapsed lungs, and severe crush injuries to the chest cavity. The locally operating safari company settled privately with Cabello's family, providing an undisclosed sum to his wife and 2 young daughters. The company implemented mandatory engine-on policies and doubled the minimum distance requirements for buffalo viewing. The footage, taken as evidence by park authorities, was later leaked online before being repeatedly removed. It was March 14th, 2013, and the land cruiser lurched through the shallow crossing of the Okavango Delta's Tamalakayan River. Elena Ruiz Calderon leaned halfway out the rear passenger window. Her camera trained on the riverbank where 3 massive crocodiles basked in the midday heat. Elena was a 29-year-old Spanish-language teacher from Spain who had saved for 2 years to afford this safari. Her colleagues described her as enthusiastic to the point of recklessness, the type who would climb fences at the zoo for better photographs. She had arrived in Botswana 5 days earlier, her first time in Africa, with 3 memory cards and a waterproof camera rated for extreme conditions. She had specifically requested a safari that included river crossings, fascinated by the idea of driving through crocodile habitat. Elena's guide, a Botswanan man named Thabo Modis, had been leading safaris for 11 years without incident. He had explained during the morning briefing that all windows must remain closed during water crossings, a rule that existed for precisely the scenario about to unfold. Adult Nile crocodiles commonly reach double-digit lengths and can be massive. Exceptionally large males may exceed 13 to 16 feet and can weigh well over 1,000 pounds. Their hunting strategy relies on explosive ambush attacks from below or beside the water's surface, often targeting prey at the waterline. As the land cruiser entered the crossing, Thabo noticed Elena opening her window. He told her twice to close it immediately. She waved him off without looking away from her viewfinder, calling back that she was fine and knew what she was doing. 2 other tourists in the vehicle, a Dutch couple named Frans and Margot de Vries, later reported feeling uneasy about Elena's behavior, but said nothing. The crocodiles on the bank appeared motionless, their eyes tracking the vehicle's progress through the water. Elena extended her upper body further out the window, camera clutched in both hands, as she filmed the reptiles just a few feet away. Thabo judged that stopping mid-channel risked bogging the vehicle, so he urged her again while keeping the land cruiser moving toward the far bank. The recovered footage shows clear footage of the basking crocodiles, then pans across the water's surface. Elena's breathing is audible on the recording, excited and rapid. Thabo's voice can be heard again, more urgent now, telling her to get inside. The vehicle was approximately 3/4 of the way across when the water beside the rear passenger door suddenly churned. The attack came from a direction Elena wasn't filming. A crocodile, submerged and invisible in the murky water, had detected the vibrations of the vehicle and the splashing near the open window. Witnesses saw the moment Elena jerks downward as something yanks her arm. She screams as she tries to pull back. The crocodile had latched onto her right forearm just below the elbow, its serrated teeth penetrating through skin, muscle, and tendons. Eyewitness accounts from people in the vehicle describe seeing Elena's body pulled violently against the window frame, her left hand grasping desperately at the door. The crocodile, estimated at 14 feet long based on later examination of the footage, used its body weight and the mechanical advantage of the water to drag her downward and outward. Elena's entire upper body was wrenched through the window opening. Leaning well out of the window with her torso angled toward the bank made it possible for the croc to wrench her upper body through the opening. One of the passengers grabbed at Elena's legs, but the crocodile's grip was absolute. The crushing pressure of its jaws had already fractured both bones in Elena's forearm. She managed one more scream before her head disappeared below the water's surface. Elena's struggle became visible through the car window as she plunged beneath the murky water, dark swirls and froth marking each violent thrash. The crocodile's pale underbelly surfaced briefly as it executed a death roll, spinning her in the current with bone-crushing force. For a fleeting moment, Elena broke the surface again before the predator dragged her under, deeper this time, leaving only the rippling water behind. Thabo accelerated hard, the land cruiser surging up the far bank within seconds of the attack. Tourists were screaming incoherently, while someone shouted that they needed to go back. Thabo radioed for emergency assistance. The nearest ranger station was 18 miles away on rough roads. A response team arrived 31 minutes after the attack. Search efforts began immediately, but were hampered by poor visibility. and the presence of multiple large crocodiles. Elena's camera was recovered 200 yards downstream the following morning, snagged on submerged vegetation. Investigators imaged the memory card and preserved the original files and timestamps as part of the chain of custody. The memory card remained functional, providing the only detailed record of the attack. No human remains were found during the 2-day search. The coroner's report, filed without a body, listed probable cause as drowning with massive traumatic injuries and estimated that survival after submersion was likely brief. The Safari Lodge implemented mandatory window locks on all vehicles and revised its liability waivers to include specific language about crocodile encounters. The footage was shared with the family, and public release was withheld. It was September 8, 2017, in the remote backcountry of Yellowstone National Park, Wyoming, a vast 2.2 million acre wilderness where dense forests, alpine meadows, and steep drainages create ideal habitat for the largest predators in the lower 48. As autumn set in, grizzly bears entered hyperphagia, a frantic feeding phase before hibernation. Instead of salmon, Yellowstone grizzlies scoured the high country for whitebark pine nuts, berries, and carrion from elk and bison. A seasonal pattern that draws bears into predictable foraging zones and increases the risk of close encounters with humans who push too far. 31-year-old Riley Thompson had hiked 4 miles into restricted territory to a remote meadow, where bears gathered to feed heavily during peak hyperphagia. The award-winning wildlife photographer from Montana had built his reputation capturing intimate moments between predators and prey, but his recent divorce had driven him to increasingly reckless behavior. His portfolio featured close encounters with dangerous wildlife that had earned him recognition in National Geographic and Wildlife Photography magazine. Park Ranger Martinez had noted Riley's frequent permit applications for backcountry access, expressing concern about his pattern of pushing boundaries. Riley's portable camouflage blind, positioned just about 80 feet from a known feeding area, violated every park safety protocol regarding bear encounters. The North American grizzly bear is among the continent's most powerful land predators. Adult females often weigh over 350 pounds, while large males can exceed 700 during peak feeding season. Their shoulder hump drives explosive bursts of speed, reaching 35 miles per hour, and their 4-inch claws are capable of breaking bone with a single defensive swipe. Female grizzlies with cubs are especially aggressive, responding to any perceived intrusion with immediate force. The attack began when Riley had been photographing a 350-pound female grizzly and her 2 yearling cubs for over an hour. The family had been feeding peacefully in the shallow creek, with the mother methodically feeding on elk remains, while her cubs played nearby. Riley's telephoto lens captured intimate behavioral moments as morning light created perfect conditions for the dramatic wildlife images that defined his career. The situation deteriorated when one curious cub wandered toward his camouflage blind, drawn by unfamiliar scents that didn't belong in their natural environment. The mother bear immediately detected the human presence through her acute sense of smell, her posture shifting from relaxed foraging to high alert within seconds. Her ears flattened against her skull while her hackles rose, classic warning signs that Riley failed to recognize from inside his concealed position. The female grizzly began moving toward the blind, initially at a deliberate walk that quickly accelerated into a full charge. She closed the roughly 80-foot gap in just over 2 seconds, her massive frame hitting full speed almost instantly. Her powerful legs propelled her 350-pound body, while her distinctive shoulder hump flexed with each stride. Riley heard the approaching footsteps and attempted to exit through the rear of his blind, but heavy camera equipment and tripod gear severely hampered his escape. The grizzly struck the lightweight structure with devastating force, collapsing the camouflage netting and trapping Riley beneath tangled poles and fabric. Before he could free himself, the bear's massive paw swiped across his back, her 4-inch claws raking through his jacket and deep into muscle tissue beneath. The swipe knocked Riley off his feet, throwing his 180-pound body nearly 12 feet from the collapsed blind. The enraged mother pounced on his prone form. Her jaws can exert nearly 1,000 psi of pressure, more than enough to fracture bone, while a single defensive swipe from her forelimbs can knock a grown adult off its feet. The bite is believed to have fractured his shoulder blade and clavicle as her teeth punched through tissue and likely punctured a lung, causing immediate breathing distress. She shook him violently before releasing her grip and striking repeatedly with her front paws. Each blow delivered tremendous force, breaking multiple ribs and causing massive internal trauma as bone fragments punctured his lungs and liver. Riley attempted to curl into a defensive position, but the sustained assault prevented any effective protection. The Grizzly's attacks focused on his torso and head, her claws opening deep lacerations across his abdomen, while her jaws applied crushing pressure to his skull. The impact is believed to have fractured the temporal bone, causing rapid loss of consciousness. Her final blows caused catastrophic internal damage and massive hemorrhaging. The mauling lasted approximately 8 minutes before the bear disengaged, having deemed the threat to her cubs neutralized. Riley Thompson died from multiple traumatic injuries, including severe head trauma, massive blood loss, and organ failure. Park authorities launched a comprehensive investigation into the incident, reviewing Riley's unauthorized entry into restricted areas and repeated violations of wildlife safety protocols. Because the attack was classified as a defensive response involving cub protection, wildlife officers did not initiate a bear euthanasia protocol. Instead, backcountry access to the area was temporarily closed while rangers monitored the sow and her cubs from a distance to prevent further encounters. The National Park Service later issued new safety advisories for wildlife photographers, emphasizing minimum distance requirements and enforcement penalties for blind placements inside active feeding zones. It was April 22, 2015, and the Zambezi River moved with deceptive calm through the Zimbabwean wilderness, its muddy waters concealing what would become Rowan McCormick's grave. Rowan McCormick, 27, had spent 3 years building his photography portfolio, working warehouse night shifts to fund increasingly ambitious trips. Fellow enthusiasts talked about how they were drawn to his willingness to get uncomfortably close to his subjects. Friends described him as fearless to the point of recklessness, the type who would hang from cliff edges or wade into surf for the right angle. He'd saved for 18 months for this trip to Zimbabwe, researching locations and planning shots with meticulous detail. What set Rowan apart from more cautious photographers was his conviction that youth and athleticism provided adequate safety margins. At 6 feet tall and fit from regular rock climbing, friends said that he believed he could outmaneuver danger if needed. The walking safari had begun at dawn, the air already thick with humidity. The Zambezi stretched wide and brown before them, its banks lined with vegetation that offered perfect cover for the river's ancient inhabitants. Nile crocodiles are among Africa's most successful predators, an ancient lineage dating back over 200 million years. Adults can exceed 16 feet in length and 1,600 pounds, their massive tails propelling them through water at bursts of up to 22 miles per hour. When they strike, the attack is explosive and brutally efficient, designed to drag prey underwater before it can react or escape. The armed guide, a veteran named Tendai, had briefed the small group that morning about maintaining distance from the water's edge. He specifically warned that crocodiles could launch themselves up to 6 feet onto land during an attack. Rowan had nodded along, but was already scanning for photo opportunities. Throughout the 2-hour walk, Tendai noticed Rowan drifting from the group, group, drawn to better angles despite repeated calls to stay close. At a particularly scenic bend in the river, where morning light caught the water's surface, Rowan must have spotted what he wanted. The group had paused for water, and Tendai was addressing another tourist's question when Rowan slipped away, moving down a slight embankment toward the shoreline. He positioned himself about 8 feet from the water, then dropped to one knee, then to a crouch, seeking the low angle. Tendai shouted a warning, already moving toward him, but Rowan was focused on the shot. The attack came without any visible warning. One moment the water was still. The next, the surface exploded as a massive crocodile launched itself from the shallows. The reptile covered the distance in less than 2 seconds, its jaws already open to reveal rows of conical teeth designed for gripping. The sound of the initial strike, a wet, crushing impact, carried across the water to the horrified group. The crocodile's jaws closed around Rowan's torso with devastating force. Several ribs shattered. Rowan's scream was high and desperate, cut short as the crocodile's weight, estimated later at over 1,400 pounds, drove him sideways into the shallow water. His camera flew from his hands, landing in the mud several feet away. The death roll began immediately. This hunting technique, unique to crocodilians, involves the predator rotating rapidly along its longitudinal axis while maintaining its grip on prey. The crocodile spun repeatedly, subjecting Rowan's body to catastrophic torque. The water around them churned violently, turning from brown to dark red. Rowan's screaming stopped after the second rotation. Whether from shock, unconsciousness, or death would never be determined with certainty. The crocodile continued its assault, dragging him into deeper water with powerful sweeps of its tail. Witnesses reported seeing Rowan's arm break the surface once, the hand open and grasping at nothing, before disappearing beneath the murky water. Tendai fired 3 warning shots from his rifle, but the animal did not break its grip. He immediately radioed the main lodge. Rangers arrived 28 minutes later with additional armed personnel and recovery equipment, but the river had already reclaimed its silence. His body surfaced 200 yards downstream 36 hours after the attack, missing both legs below the knee and bearing extensive tissue damage consistent with post-mortem predation. The coroner's preliminary report listed cause of death as massive trauma and drowning, with catastrophic chest injuries, including multiple rib fractures, bilateral lung perforation, and probable cardiac damage from the initial bite force. The crocodile responsible was never located or hunted. Officials cited policy and a reluctance to kill animals acting in a natural predatory way unless they proved an ongoing risk. The safari company suspended operations for 1 week out of respect, then resumed tours with enhanced safety protocols requiring clients to sign additional waivers. It was October 4th, 2017, and the golden light of late afternoon spread across the open savanna of the Masai Mara in southwestern Kenya as 26-year-old Tyler Brennan followed a walking trail toward a small kopje, the rocky outcroppings that dotted the otherwise flat grasslands. Tyler was an experienced safari guide, having grown up in Nairobi with a family deeply involved in wildlife conservation and ecotourism. From a young age, he had learned the rhythms of the African bush, tracking lions, leopards, and elephants, and guiding tourists safely across some of the continent's most dangerous landscapes. Tyler's reputation as a skilled tracker and wildlife interpreter had earned him respect among both tourists and fellow guides. He prided himself on reading animal behavior as precisely as weather patterns and on anticipating wildlife movement in areas where even seasoned rangers would tread cautiously. His sharp instincts and familiarity with the Mara ecosystem had made him a reliable leader for high-end safari groups, often bringing visitors within breathtaking distance of predators while maintaining a meticulous eye for safety. On this particular afternoon, Tyler had been leading a small private walking safari along the edge of a wooded valley. The purpose was to allow his guests a rare opportunity to observe a pride of lions from a safe distance, following the animals' movements as they returned to their territory. The pride had been spotted earlier that morning in the area, and Tyler had carefully plotted a route that would offer both visibility and safety, relying on the wind, terrain, and distance to keep them out of harm's way. The The path took Tyler and the tourists through a secluded area of mixed woodland and grassland. Tyler had been tracking the pride's movements based on fresh spoor and was confident they were still several hundred meters away. What Tyler didn't know was that one of the pride's male lions had made a fresh kill during the midday hours and had dragged a young impala into dense brush just off the trail, creating an unexpected danger zone directly in their path. Lions are apex predators of the savanna, with adult males weighing up to 500 pounds and possessing the strength to subdue a full-grown Cape buffalo or even a zebra with precise, coordinated attacks. They are social animals, but male lions are fiercely protective of kills, especially during the dry season when prey is scarce. Their powerful forelimbs, retractable claws, and crushing bite deliver devastating force, while their acute sense of smell allows them to detect intruders at distances far beyond human perception. Lions defending high-value food will attack without hesitation, often killing intruders outright. Tyler's critical misjudgment occurred when he led the group along what appeared to be a clear trail through an area of dense brush. While his training emphasized maintaining awareness of fresh kills and lion activity, the concealed nature of the kill site and the lack of visible carcass made detection nearly impossible. The male lion had been lying in the thick brush beside his kill, completely hidden from view, when the human group approached to within 15 meters of his position. The lion detected the human scent and movement immediately. His body tensed as he assessed the threat to his food, his territorial instincts overriding any natural caution around humans. Tyler was leading the group, his attention focused on scanning the open areas ahead, rather than the dense brush beside the trail. He had no warning before the attack began. The lion exploded from the brush with devastating speed, covering the 15 meters in seconds. Tyler turned at the sound of breaking branches and saw the massive predator charging directly at him. He raised his walking stick and shouted, attempting to make himself appear larger and more threatening. But the lion's momentum was unstoppable. Tyler tried to step backward, but his foot caught on a root, causing him to stumble. The lion struck Tyler with the full force of 450 to 500 pounds, traveling at maximum speed, the impact driving him backward onto the ground. Tyler's walking stick flew from his hands as he crashed onto his back. The wind knocked from his lungs. The lion was on him instantly, his massive forepaws pinning Tyler's shoulders to the ground while his claws tore through clothing and skin. The lion's jaws clamped down on Tyler's throat with crushing force, his canine teeth penetrating deep into the vital structures of Tyler's neck. The bite severed major blood vessels and caused catastrophic damage to Tyler's trachea and cervical spine. Tyler's body convulsed briefly as the lion maintained his grip, ensuring the threat was neutralized. The attack lasted approximately 30 seconds from the initial charge to Tyler's final movements. The tourists, who had been several meters behind Tyler, screamed and backed away rapidly. The lion released Tyler's body and stood over it for several moments, blood dripping from his jaws as he assessed whether any other threats remained. Satisfied that the danger had passed, the lion returned to the dense brush where his kill remained hidden, leaving Tyler's body lying on the trail. The tourists retreated to a safe distance and used their radio to call for emergency assistance. Rangers arrived within 45 minutes, but Tyler was already dead, his injuries far beyond any possibility of survival. The lion remained in the area, guarding his kill, and rangers had to use vehicles and noise to drive him away before they could recover Tyler's body. Investigators concluded that while Tyler had been highly experienced, the concealed nature of the kill site and the lion's position in dense brush had made detection nearly impossible. The lion's behavior was entirely predictable given the circumstances, a male defending a fresh kill from perceived threats. The attack site showed clear evidence of the impala carcass hidden in the brush just meters from where Tyler had been killed. Wildlife officials faced a difficult decision regarding the lion. While the animal had killed a human, it had been exhibiting normal food defensive behavior in response to humans approaching its kill. After extensive discussion, officials decided to monitor the lion closely, but not destroy it, as the attack had occurred due to an accidental close encounter rather than predatory behavior. The lion was tracked for several weeks to ensure it did not display unusual aggression toward humans. The incident sent shockwaves through Kenya's safari community, highlighting how even highly skilled guides could fall victim to a predator's instinctual response when circumstances created unexpected danger. Colleagues and tourists mourned Tyler's death, emphasizing the dangers of walking safaris in areas with active lion populations and fresh kills. His funeral drew attendees from across the continent, a solemn reminder of the fine line between human curiosity and wildlife survival instincts. The story of Tyler Brennan became a cautionary tale for safari operators, reinforcing safety protocols and the importance of constant vigilance, even for experienced guides. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.